Hello. So I'm quickly going to make a basic player character, nothing too good, but something that will go by. So yeah, let's start. So first we need to make a square sprite. That will be, let's just call it a square. And now I'm going to make an empty game object, call it the player. This is where all the graphics will be set upon. And it will just be empty, but it will contain all the different sprites. So I'm just going to make two sprites and two empty objects, actually three empty objects. Now let's take one sprite and call it head and add our square sprite here. Now we have this. Let's make the color so it looks a bit like skin. Yeah, I guess, yeah, that looks better. Now let's add a body, and let's call it body. Add our square sprite, and I'm going to use the R button to shape the body. You can also use this scale tool, and I'm going to change the color to orange, a bit of an inmate like look. Now the three game objects we made will be where our arms, legs and feet will go, and the arms will be, we will need two arms, two legs and two feet. So instead of making two separate objects, it's better to have one empty game object and the two objects sitting on it. So basically whenever we move this object, the two things inside it will also move. Let me just reset this. Right. So let's call this our arms, legs and feet. So now let's add some arms then. Let's create a 2D object sprite, call it right, because it will be the right arm. Let's add a square and then make it thinner and longer, and let's take it to the side. I think it's a bit too thin, right? And let's make it more longer. And let's make the color, change the color. Oops, I meant to duplicate this. Let's keep the right on the right and rename this duplicate to left. Alright, now we'll do the same thing for the legs. So 2D object sprite, call it left, give it our square, shape the square, let's make it slightly bigger, fatter. And now let's duplicate this and keep it here. And like this looks wrong here, so we need to add something. So let's see, 2D object sprite, hip, and let's give it a square shape. Let's give it some just pick, and let's bring it down here. Actually, let's make it blue so it looks like he's wearing something. That looks weird. Okay, so let's give these legs some blue jeans like color. Let's make them a bit dark. Should have done this before we duplicated, but whatever now. Alright, so now he's wearing jeans, and finally we need to give him some feet. These will be important because they are also necessary for making a player controller later. Let's call this left. Actually, we don't really need the second one, we can just duplicate and rotate. Okay, so once again give him our basic square, pull him down here, and now let's change its size and bring him up using the move tool. Okay, it's a bit small, so now it's too big. Yeah. Okay, so this is done. We can duplicate it and keep one here, and let's give them a brown color so it looks like he's wearing shoes. Right, and let's call this let's call this right. So there we go, we have a complete player character. Yay. But of course he's missing a lot. Right now if I start, he won't actually do anything. Of course he doesn't have any scripts on him, but we can make some. Not right now though. Okay, sorry, not a cube, delete. Okay, so let's add a sprite. Let's give it a square. We are making let's make a platform, so it will be a bit nicer. And yeah, now we have, let's call this a platform, and we want the player to actually fall on the ground. We don't want him hovering in the air like that. So let's take our player and add a rigid body component. We can go here, add component, physics 2D, because this is a 2D game. Physics 2D, let's add component, sorry, rigid body 2D, and physics 2D, a box collider. Okay, wait. So now we can add a box collider. So basically what rigid body does is it can allow us to fall, it can allow us to have stuff like mass, drag, gravity. It basically adds physics, basic physics. And a box collider makes things collide. But the problem is our box collider is on our player and not on our individual components. Let me show you what the problem actually is. So yeah, and I forgot another major thing, which is that this platform also needs a box collider. So I, okay, so now it has a box collider. So now two things should collide with each other. They should stop. But the problem is that the player's collider is this small, so it stands there. Now one solution is to alter his collider, basically make it bigger, and we can do that by choosing edit collider here, and we can then start, oops, uh, edit collider, no, okay, hang on a minute. Okay, so we can just do this and he will land, but the problem is if we take him here, yeah, this happens. He falls in a different way. We want him to fall straight down because he isn't standing on anything, but his collider is standing, and he's probably, yep, gone below the whatever there is below this. Anyway, so when he comes here, he isn't actually touching anything, so he should fall straight down. But because there's a collider here, he will, yep, he will do that. So the solution is, instead let's remove the collider here and add it everywhere else. So yeah, let me just write box here, to box 2D, so that every time it will be easier. Add component box 2D. Now we don't want it again, the same problem will happen if we make it sit on the arms. We want it to be on the right. Another advantage of not making, basically that's why you should have like right arm and left arm sit on arms game object. Yeah, so I'm just adding colliders everywhere. And finally the feet. Oops. Feet. That's it. He will now collide. Yay. It may look boring, but it can get really interesting. So yeah, that's it for now. I'll add a new, but our character can't really do anything. He can fall from very high, but yeah, that's it. So next time we can add a script so that he can walk around.